We've all known someone, maybe a kid in our family, maybe even ourselves, who gets labeled a picky eater. But what happens when that pickiness goes way beyond just not liking broccoli? When it's so severe that it actually starts causing serious health problems? Well, today we're diving deep into a widely misunderstood eating disorder that is so much more than simple preference.
And this is always the first question, isn't it? Is it just picky eating? For years, this question pretty much shut down the conversation. It left families struggling, often feeling judged, without a real name for what they were going through. But as we're about to see, the answer to this question is a huge, definitive no.
Because, look, when avoiding food leads to serious weight loss or major nutritional gaps, or it's just completely disrupting your daily life, we're not talking about a personality quirk anymore. We're talking about a clinical condition, and it has a specific name. And that name is avoidant/restrictive food intake disorder, or ARFID for short. Now, the official definition talks about a persistent failure to meet nutritional needs, but honestly, the most important part of this definition is what it doesn't say. Unlike anorexia or bulimia, ARFID has absolutely nothing to do with a fear of gaining weight or how you see your body. And that distinction, that is everything. It's the key that unlocks this whole thing.
Now get this, and this might surprise you. ARFID is actually a really new diagnosis. It only became an official thing in 2013 when it was added to the DSM-5. Think about that. Before 2013, countless people dealing with this they fell right through the cracks of the system. There was no box for them to tick.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting. ARFID isn't just one thing. It doesn't look the same for everyone. The disorder generally shows up in one of three very different ways, and it all comes down to the root reason why someone is avoiding food. So these three presentations are basically the why behind the what. First up, you've got sensory sensitivity. This is where the texture, the smell, the look, even the sound of a certain food is just unbearable. Second, there's a fear of aversive consequences. This is often sparked by a traumatic experience, like choking on something or getting sick. And third, there's just a profound lack of interest in food or eating. It's not an act, the drive just isn't there. Okay, let's paint a picture. Imagine three different people are all refusing to eat a bowl of soup. Person one might refuse because the lumpy texture just feels gross in their mouth. That's sensory sensitivity. Person two might refuse because they choked on soup once as a kid, and now they're terrified it'll happen again. That's fear. And person three, they might just have zero appetite and feel totally full after just one bite. You see, it's the same behavior, avoiding the soup, but for three completely different reasons.
So it makes total sense then that you can't use the same old diagnostic tools for AFID that you would for other eating disorders. I mean, the standard questionnaires, they're all looking for concerns about weight and body shape. But for AFID, you need totally different specialized tools. One's designed to dig into the real drivers, those sensory issues, that fear, or that lack of interest.
Getting that official diagnosis in 2013 was a massive victory, no doubt. It finally gave families a name for their struggle. But it also created this huge, immediate, and incredibly frustrating new problem. Okay, we have a diagnosis, now what do we do about it? This kicked off what experts now call the treatment gap. For more than 5 years after ARFID got its name, there was no proven evidence-based treatment specifically for it. Doctors and families were just left scrambling, trying to adapt therapies meant for other conditions, and, well, the results were hit or miss. It was this bizarre time of incredible hope mixed with just deep frustration. I mean, just pause and think about that for a second. Can you imagine a doctor being able to look you in the eye and tell you exactly what's wrong, give it a name, and then have to follow it up with, but we don't have a specific tested treatment for it yet? That was the reality for the entire AFID community for years, a problem with a name but no roadmap to a solution. And nothing really brings home the human side of that treatment gap like this quote from Stephanie Elliott. She's an advocate and a mom whose child recovered. And she said, "I wish this book had been available when our family was struggling to find answers." That just perfectly captures that feeling of desperation so many families were going through. But the story doesn't end there, of course. The clinical world didn't just stand still. Researchers got to work, determined to fill that void. They set out to build a specific structured therapy from the ground up, one designed to tackle the unique challenges of ARFID head-on. And the result was a true game changer. Cognitive behavioral therapy for ARFID, or CBT-AR. This was developed by a brilliant team at Harvard Medical School, and it wasn't just a tweak of an old therapy. No, this was a purpose-built treatment designed to directly address those 3 different faces of ARFID we just talked about.
And the great thing about CBT-AR is that it provides this incredibly clear 4-stage game plan. It all starts with education, just understanding what this disorder actually is. From there, you move on to creating a personalized treatment plan. Because remember, ARFID isn't one size fits all. The real work happens in stage 3, where you systematically tackle the specific reasons for the avoidance head-on. And finally, you build skills to prevent relapse, to make sure all that progress actually sticks.
And that was the missing piece. A structured, adaptable, evidence-based roadmap. It gave clinicians the tools they desperately needed, and it gave patients and their families the clear path forward they had been waiting so long for. All right, so let's pull all of this together. The journey from complete confusion to real clarity around ARFID has been a whirlwind, really, and it's all built on a few core, powerful ideas. So if you walk away with anything today, let it be this. 1. ARFID is a real, clinical diagnosis. It is not just picky eating. 2. It's defined by the why behind the food avoidance, which has 0 to do with body image. 3. Those whys typically fall into one of 3 buckets: sensory stuff, fear, or a lack of interest. And 4, the most hopeful part, there is now a specialized, targeted therapy that offers a real, structured path to recovery. At the end of the day, the entire story of ARFID, from diagnosis to treatment, comes back to this one powerful shift. Progress only happens for everyone involved when we stop judging the behavior, the what, and start getting really curious about the reason behind it, the why. That simple shift from judgment to understanding is what opens the door to compassion and to effective treatment. And that really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The story of ARFID teaches us that a difficult relationship with food isn't always a failure of willpower or discipline. So what if the key, maybe for all of us, isn't about trying harder, but about understanding more deeply? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.